This week on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
And I'm not gonna admit something I didn't do!
You defensive bitch.
Oh,
You know all of the dirt. Say it to her face right now.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be recapping the new episode of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 6, Episode 7. Let's get right into it. You guys, this episode, masterpiece. That's all I can say. If Salt Lake City doesn't get an Emmy, they better, because when I tell y'all, this was the epitome of reality television, of entertainment. They're taking it. This had me on the floor. Let's get right into it. So, the women are arriving to the airport for the yacht excursion that they're going on with Below Deck. Now, Whitney did get a text from Bronwyn saying that she wouldn't make the flight. I was shocked for a second. I was like, oh, wow, is she really not going? But she told Whitney that she will be coming. She just will meet them later. As you may remember, at this point, all of the stories about Bronwyn's alleged criminal past had just come to light. But nevertheless, the ladies hop on that plane and they get going to their destination. They went to a island by the name of Conwan. It's a small island, very nice. Apparently it's where all the billionaires like to go there and play. They arrive to the island and then they make their way to greet the crew from Below Deck, Captain Jason and everybody else. As I said to y'all last week, I don't watch none of those shows, but I do know that those Below Deck shows get like crazy high ratings. And I think they're going to show an episode on their show with like their point of view of the women on there. So that'll be kind of interesting. I love that Angie went around to hug every single one of the people on the crew there. I thought maybe she was related to one of them, but no, she was just greeting them. And then Captain Jason says that they're going to have a good time. They're going to get them nice and wet and then get in the water. So they go inside. Britney's already melting over some of the guys who work at the yacht. Somebody lets them know that they don't have to worry about Bronwyn because they'll manage to bring her on board eventually whenever she does show up, because they are going to be taking off for soon. So they look at the boat, the rooms. Heather and Whitney will be rooming together. Lisa and Meredith, Mary and Angie, and then finally Britney and Bronwyn. Now that's a crazy pairing, that last one. So then they go to the top of the boat. Heather says, girls, listen, Whitney and I are actually friends with Captain Jason, so be in your best behavior and don't be crazy. Really, Heather? Who do you think you're talking to? You're talking to the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, okay? That didn't go as planned, for sure. So, and then here goes Britney saying that she needs to be with Captain Jason and she wants to be with him because she's on a 30-day break from Jared. And the ladies say, okay, if you want to go for Captain Jason, we'll support it, but you better not say a single word about Jared this entire trip. And Whitney says, yeah, and in fact, if you do say Jared's name, we're going to splash you with water. And she kind of said his name jokingly, but Meredith and Whitney actually got some water and they dumped it on top of her. So they're letting her know that they ain't playing around. Then a lady from the crew tells them that Bronwyn is actually there. They take a look out from the top of the boat and they see a small boat going full speed coming their direction, and it's Bronwyn. She is here. She wasn't really that late at all. So I'm really glad Bronwyn decided to come, because I'm really not that big of a fan of people hiding and not showing up. Go, show up, and, stand up for yourself. Bronwyn came in a costume. Lisa, under her breath, says some shady thing about, oh, I've seen this costume on her Instagram before. And of course she brings up the stories that are out about Bronwyn and like right away. But then Bronwyn makes her entrance. Heather then says like everybody should go to their rooms, settle in, and then get dressed a little bit later in their bikinis to come out into the water. So they all go into their rooms to unpack, and change. We see Meredith and Lisa talk about Bronwyn's entrance. They wonder if Bronwyn will address the stories out there. Meredith says, I hope that we get an honest answer. That would be nice. Then we see Bronwyn and Britney. The fact that they're together, I can imagine how mad they are that they're roommates. And also, you guys, this how much crazier can Britney get? She brought a stuffed unicorn that has a recording of Jared's voice when you squeeze it, saying like, I love you or something. So then Britney says to Bronwyn, so where were you? Why didn't you come with us? And Bronwyn says, well, I almost didn't come at all. I'm not ready to say yet, but someone from this group has definitely been planting stories of me in the press. Britney says, wait, somebody from this group? And Bronwyn says, yes. Britney says, well, was all that Grand Theft Auto stuff, like, is that not true? Bronwyn says, no, it's not. Britney says, well, there's public record about it. Bronwyn says, no, there's no public record about it. There are some very specific shadiness that's going on. And it bothers me to hear that you've all been talking about it behind my back because none of y'all even reached out to ask how I was doing other than Mary. So then in her confessional, Bronwyn explains that over 20 years ago, she was a teen mom. We know this. She did have some eviction because she wasn't able to pay rent, but that was pretty much it. She then says that there is a case that is not current. It has been sealed. And the only thing that you can find about that case is a penal code referencing it, which that specific penal code has to do with like Grand Theft Auto, identity theft, and things like that. But because it is sealed, we can't actually see what the whole truth is. Who are the defendants? What are the charges? None of that. We don't really know the full facts. Bronwyn says that it's very upsetting for her family, but of course for Todd, because she says that he's a very serious person and he deals with very serious people. So, oof. So, some time is going by, the boat is going, the chefs are cooking, everyone's doing their thing. But then poor Angie is throwing up. She is seasick. Then they head up to have lunch. Heather says, cheers, everyone. I'm so glad that Bronwyn is here. And then Whitney asks Bronwyn, is everything okay, though? And Bronwyn says, it's a lot of stuff that went on last week. People want to dig in the past and twist things. And Todd felt like maybe it would have been better for me to stay home and not come here. Meredith says, well, I didn't look at specifics, but I saw things of a few years ago and some of a very long time ago. Some of them more recently. I don't know, but I think it's in your best interest to clear it up. Maybe it looks worse than it really is. And Bronwyn says, yes, it definitely looks worse than it really is. I mean, I got kicked out of BYU 20 years ago. I didn't pay my last month of rent at my apartment, so there was a judgment. Mary then asks, how is that even coming up in the press anyway? Heather says, but the charges coming up are from 4 years ago. Bronwyn says, no, there was no charges against me 4 years ago. This new thing that is coming up is something that happened at my work a long time ago, and I cooperated with the authorities, but there was no charges against me. Years later, charges went through, but not with me, and the case was sealed. And then Heather says, but why would they charge you and put that on your record? And then Bronwyn says, I didn't have any charges. I've never been charged. I've never been arrested. There's been no mugshots. None of that. Heather says, oh, well, then why does it bother you then? Bronwyn says, well, we think that there's some very nasty things that have come out. And both Todd and I are concerned that it's someone here that's doing it. So then Lisa Barlow is quick to say, no one would do that. No one here would do that. Nobody. Whitney says that she thinks it could be true. Then Bronwyn's like, yeah, Whitney, I do think that too. I mean, it's weird that stuff comes up in this group all the time. Lisa says, well, I don't think it's weird that, you dug up stuff about me. You brought stuff about me to the group. We've had our problem, but I don't believe that anyone here would do that to you. It's not me. Lisa was being way too loud and way too bothered for someone who didn't do something. And she also was making no sense because she was basically saying, oh, well, somebody dig things up about me, but no one would dig up things about you, Bronwyn. I was like, huh? What is that logic? Anyway, Bronwyn says, listen, all I know is that if after Amy's party, things got very intensified. I had a lot of fights at that party. And me and Lisa apologized and we sat down after that. And Lisa says, it sounds like you're accusing me. And Bronwyn says, I am not saying it was you, but all I'm going to say is that it would be very devastating that if I sat down to apologize and it happened to be you. But But Lisa's going crazy. She's like, well, what about my stuff? Who brought that out? Now, mind you, no one accused Lisa. They insinuated a little bit, but she was definitely sounding very guilty. Because, again, no, they did not directly accuse her. But they kind of leave it there. Then they all get going to get on the water. Heather was having the time of her life riding some water thingy on top of Jason. Britney was feeling jealous. She needed to have some attention, so she goes flirt with some other guy from the boat. Y'all have to see Britney. Like, she is just so unserious. The ladies got a little bit too far off the boat. A guy had to go get them, and then poor Angie couldn't stop throwing up nonstop. I don't even understand. How do you get seasick? I know a lot of people do, but like, what exactly is that? Like, does the water make them dizzy? Is it the waves? I don't know, but she was not good. She was not feeling good at all. Okay, so then a little bit after that, Whitney and Bronwyn go to Bronwyn's room. And Bronwyn's showing Whitney that little unicorn that Britney brought. But get this. So they discuss the lunch that they just had and Lisa's reaction. And Bronwyn is sort of putting two and two together. She's remembering the whole Alibaba thing from last year with Whitney and how Lisa might have put that out there. But Bronwyn's biggest red flag is that whoever this loser is that brought up this stuff about her past on social media, he has a nickname for Bronwyn. He calls her Conwyn. And that's the same thing that she says Lisa was calling her at Amy's party. And this stuff hadn't come out in the press yet, so she's kind of making a connection. Now, that would have been like the perfect smoking gun. They did run back the tape, and Lisa didn't really say Conwyn. She actually said Fraudwyn. So technically it was different. Bronwyn confused that. But anyway, then Whitney runs to Heather's room and tells Heather all of this stuff that Bronwyn just said to her, and Heather is done. She thinks that all of the leaks have come from Lisa. From when it comes to Bronwyn, when it comes to Meredith, when it comes to Whitney, when it comes to Angie, she thinks that it is all Lisa. So Whitney says, what do we do? So Heather's like, go get Meredith. Let's bring her in here. So they get Meredith in there. So when Meredith gets there, Whitney says, Meredith, listen, every time Lisa hates somebody, somehow big things have come out about them on the press. Meredith says, so you think she's engaging with the press? Well, if that's the case, if she is feeding information to the media outlets that are negative about her friends, that is a problem. But she might not have done it. I don't know. We're in a good place. I was like, now Meredith, come on. I'm going to need season 2 Meredith. Remember y'all, the Meredith that was like, who's calling who a fraud? Love you, baby. That's the Meredith I'm going to need. Not this, well, I don't know. Okay, so then it is much later. Now, my girl Angie is not feeling the best, but you know what? At least she's got Mary on her side, and the captain does go to try and make her feel better. It's time for dinner. Unfortunately, Angie's just feeling so bad that she's not going to make it to dinner. That's how bad she feels. But Mary, being the good friend that she is, will be staying with Angie. So the other ladies have their dinner. Heather says, I'm going to miss Angie and Mary's commentary. And then Britney, with her little shady self, says, I'm not going to miss Mary's commentary. And then Heather's like, oh, come on, Britney. Like, we have a rule here, okay? If you're going to talk ish about people, we got to do it to their faces. Britney says, well, I do it all the time. I'm the only one that does it, really. So then Bronwyn turns to Britney and says, no, you don't. There's a lot of people on the table who you've talked about, and you have not told them to their face. I was like, oh, Lord. Well, you guys, they pulled a scene from a couple of weeks ago where Britney and Bronwyn actually went shopping. And during this little shopping spree, Britney told Bronwyn that she thought Lisa was trying to make her feel like a little sister and things like that, and wouldn't really listen to her, and that she didn't understand why Meredith was always pretending to have seizures during their conversations and why she just couldn't talk normally. So of course, here at the table, Bronwyn just lets it out. She says, Lisa, Britney feels like you want to act like a big sister and you're always in her business. And Meredith, she says that you pretend to have seizures and that you slur your words and that you go from 0 to 100 over nothing. So then Meredith says, pretend to have seizures? I've never had a seizure in my life, and that's a horrible thing to say about somebody. There are people who have had them, including my child. And then Britney says, well, my child. And then Meredith's like, I don't care. And then Britney says, you see, Everyone, this is the seizure that I'm talking about. Look at how she acts. And then, you guys, Meredith gets up. She grabs her drink and pours it down Britney's lap. I was like, why her lap, though? But then Britney responds by grabbing her drink and throws it at Meredith's face. So then Meredith's like, I've had enough of your nonsense. You're disgraceful. You're disgusting. You know what's funny? This is the second time that Bronwyn has completely thrown Britney under the bus and has caused major conflict. This happened last season during the whole high body count slut shaming thing at Meredith's bat mitzvah. Britney is saying to Meredith, nobody flips in just 1 second the way you do. Like, it's concerning. But I will say, the one thing I like about Britney is that we're getting to see the activated Meredith. So that's what I'll give to her. That was something else. All right, so then Heather says we all need to talk and own things. What else do we have to own? And then Whitney says, well, you and Meredith and I need to own up to the conversation we had earlier. And Meredith says, yes, you two should talk about it. And then Whitney's like, well, you were a part of it too. And Meredith's like, yeah, but it was you two. Like, she wanted to completely disengage herself from Heather and Whitney. But I have to give props to Heather because she was not scared. She looked Lisa Barlow straight in the face and said, I'm just going to go ahead and be honest with you and say, I think that you're the source of all the dirt. Ooh. Lisa was shocked. She says, why were y'all even questioning me? Meredith says, well, they say that when you're mad at someone, things get leaked. Lisa says, well, I hope you defended me. And then Meredith's like, yeah, I did, but they think that you feed the blogs. Lisa says, I guess that I must be the mother effing Dawn of Salt Lake City because what is this? Like, I can't take this. And then she begins to cry and says, you all can go ahead and beat on me. That's all you do. Who else would y'all do it if I wasn't here? She wants to go, but Heather wants her to sit down and to keep talking. But Lisa's crying. She's like, F you. I've been called a cheater. I've been called a Jen Shah. Y'all are lucky that I don't even speak to any of y'all. Then she kind of like flips on Meredith and she's like, you talked about me. You didn't defend me. I'm going to be so mad if you didn't. Heather says to Lisa, I've been a good effing friend to you, Lisa. You just have to own it. Own that you're the source of all the effing dirt. And then Lisa says, I'm not going to admit something that I didn't do. Heather surprised me because she said, you effing defensive effing bitch. You know all the dirt. Say it to her face right now. Talking about Bronwyn. And then Lisa says, why am I responsible for what's on the internet? Heather says, I just think you're the source of everything. And then Lisa says, well, if you think that, then we can't be friends then. Heather says, have I ever spoken on your marriage? Have I ever talked about your businesses? Have I ever disparaged you or done anything to you? I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and if you're not going to listen, then get off the effing yacht. Lisa's like, okay, I'm going then. I'm going to go. I will not be accused of something that I didn't do. But Lisa doesn't go just yet because Heather says, no, I actually don't want you to go. I just want you to sit here and own it and listen. But Lisa says that it's not true. I'm not owning up to something that I didn't do. It's not me. She then calls John. She's crying. She's really sad. And Heather's like chasing her around as she's on the phone with John. And Lisa says to John, they're accusing me of everything. Heather came at me saying that I'm the source. I've never done anything to them. And you guys, it was just chaotic. Y'all have to watch. Like, it's one thing for us to recap, talk about it, but so this episode was just one of those that it's like a must watch. So then Heather goes into Mary and Angie's room because they've missed it all, and she tells them that she called out Lisa, and y'all can already imagine Mary and Angie's reaction. They were like, good job. I'm proud of you. And then Britney actually went down to go check up on Lisa, but Lisa's like, I don't want you near me. She's still on the phone with John. She wanted to be with him, and she stayed there for a long time just by herself, and that was the end of the episode. Oof, you guys, when I tell y'all this was a 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and we saw the preview for next week. We're going to keep getting the drama with Meredith and Britney. Like, it's going to get really dramatic. So I can't wait. But this was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. I gotta say, listen, is Lisa the source of all the BS? She could. I don't know. I really don't. All I know is that I'm entertained, and that's all I care about. Okay. I did see this guy who they kept talking about, who was the one that brought up the rumors and the stories about Bronwyn, and I actually checked out his Twitter. He is a weirdo. He's way too invested in this. You would think that Bronwyn killed one of his family. I don't know. He's way too obsessed with it. It's really not that serious. But you guys, this was a great episode. What did y'all make of it? What did y'all make of Heather? I will say I was pretty surprised with Heather because, especially after last season, I kind of assumed that Heather would just kind of be Lisa's lapdog. But it's clear that Heather plays the long game, the strategic game, and she really is not just a housewife, but she's a producer. She produces the hell out of these episodes, and it makes for great TV. It really does. The way she looked at Lisa and said, "I think you're the source of all the BS, of all the dirt." Whew. Wow, this was great. You guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on next time. Y'all have a great one.